I would like to thank you for taking the opportunity to view the Superintendent's video explaining the budget process, Part 2, 25-26, Building Our Future Together. The Wappinger Central School District Board of Education members, President Michael McFarland, Vice President Eddie A. Sloshower, Trustee Virgil Capillari, Trustee Cheryl Miggets, Trustee Marie Johnson, Trustee John S. Morgan, Trustee Peggy Kelland, Trustee Keith Odoms, and Trustee John Lumia. Senior Staff Administration, Assistant Superintendent for Administration and Information Systems, Mr. Darren Lolkema. Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Dr. Michelle Cardwell. Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Business Development, Ms. Kristen Dainty. Assistant Superintendent of Student Support Services, Mr. Richard Zip. Executive Director of Human Resources, Ms. Renee Harris. Our Director of Facilities, Mr. Ronald Brois, and the District Clerk and Secretary to the Superintendent, Alberta Pedro. So to this point, we've done a number of budget presentations. Back on November the 4th, we had the Superintendent's video explaining the budget process. Back on February the 10th, we did the preliminary budget presentation 1. Today we're doing the Superintendent's video explaining the budget process. This will be in English and Spanish. March 10th, Superintendent's recommended budget presentation 1, as well as the transportation proposition presentation. April the 7th, Superintendent's recommended budget presentation number 2, state aid update presentation. April the 22nd, Superintendent's recommended budget presentation. That's the ballot presentation and the budget adoption. May the 5th, ballot presentation to the community. That will be at John Jay High School, 512. The community forum, the state mandated public hearing on the budget. That will be at Roy C. Ketchum High School. And the budget vote will be on May 20th. So when we develop a budget, it is obviously more than a collection of numbers. It reflects the mission, the core values, the needs, and all of the goals of the Wappinger Central School District learning community. That includes the Board of Education, that includes the staff, that includes the students, that includes the parents, and that includes the taxpayers in the Wappinger Central School District. So this budget provides for our students' educational needs while we maintain compliance with New York State. It outlines the annual spending plan for the district and is an aggregate view of all of the financial numbers that drive the district's operations for the following year. And as I stated, it's created in alignment with the Board of Education annual goals. The budget process. Careful consideration and analysis. Beginning in October, the budget is built upon recommendations from our buildings, from our offices, the Board of Education, and as I mentioned, our entire community. There's a great deal of time and energy and effort that goes into this process. Obviously, we started in October. It's not finalized and presented until April, so there's a lot of detail that is examined when we go through this process. Late April, the board adopts a budget. This year it's going to be April the 22nd, which is then put forth to the voters on the third Tuesday, which this year is May the 20th. Factoring in the property tax cap and the tax levy. The tax levy is the total amount to be raised locally by the district through the collection of taxes. The tax cap limits how much the levy can be increased. It's one part of the formula used to calculate the allowable tax levy. For 25-26, New York State caps the tax levy limit at 1.73% with some exclusions. If a district decides to go over that 1.73, it would require 60% voter approval to pass. So the term tax cap can be misleading. This 2% figure only applies to municipalities, which includes school districts. So let's talk about our 25-26 preliminary superintendent's recommended budget. Once again, the budget that I am recommending to the Board of Education will be below the tax cap. So last year, our approved tax levy was a little over $190 million. The 25-26 proposed tax levy is a little over $193 million. The levy-to-levy increase, a little over $2.8 million, and we're looking at potentially a 1.5% increase. We will provide additional information as we receive additional information from New York State in regards to state aid. So here are some frequently asked questions. Does the tax cap law mean that the school taxes levy cannot be over 2%? No. Each district creates their own unique calculation based on a complex formula. And the 2% factor is only one of the 8 that we use. What is a tax levy limit? It's the highest allowable tax levy before exclusions that a district can propose as part of its annual budget. It requires 50% approval by the taxpayers. There are some exclusions which would include capital expansions and pension costs. How does this affect my tax bill? Does the 2% concept apply there? This law does not apply to property tax rate increases, only school tax levies, which I shared with you earlier in the presentation. So let's take a look at the district and the tax cap. The law provides for an 8-step formula that must be used to calculate the tax levy limit. Calculation uses a growth factor that is based on the local tax base, and the calculation uses the rate of inflation, consumer price index, known to many as CPI, or 2%, whichever is lower. So the 25-26 CPI is currently at 2.95%, which is the current rate of inflation. WCSD is capped at 2% for tax cap calculation purposes. Needless to say, it makes for a very, very interesting budget process. So as you see, as I mentioned earlier, the tax cap for our district is 1.73%. I'm hoping to come in under the tax cap, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.5%. How do we determine the allowable tax levy? You start with the prior year tax levy, then there's an application of factors for growth in the CPI, addition and subtraction of current and prior year items. An example might be a payment in lieu of taxes, also known as a pilot, and the inclusion of items is calculated in accordance with legislation. Examples: New York State retirement system adjustments and the capital tax levy. New York State aid is an extremely important variable. Our budgets can't be finalized until we have the numbers from New York State. All school aid awarded to the 691 school districts in New York is determined annually. It's an annual process. It's determined by the state legislature through the state budget process. Funds come from 2 principal sources: the general fund accounts, 88%, and lottery funds, 12%. The superintendent generally submits claim for aid to the Office of Management Services at the New York State Education Department. So what are the 25-26 revenue sources in addition to the aid that the district receives from the state of New York? Payments in lieu of taxes, interest earnings, continuing education, tuition, foster care, health services billing, insurance recoveries, gifts and donations, and other miscellaneous items. Revenue by source. The majority of the revenue that we collect, which is 68.57%, is through the proposed tax levy. Right now, according to the numbers that we have preliminarily, the proposed New York State aid to our school district will be 29.11% of our budget. Fund balance 1.42% and other revenue just under 1%. Learning the budget language. Obviously, we're here to help if you have any questions. We understand that the documents, terms, and acronyms we use may not reflect the everyday language. Want to better understand terms, acronyms, and more? We've developed a list of frequently used financial and budget terms to bridge the gap and have a more fluent conversation with the Board of Education and the community. This information is updated annually and can be found on our district's website, wappingerschools.org. Prior year budget information is also available on our website if you'd like to compare and contrast budgets from one year to the next. So you can help build our budget, and I want to thank those of you who have contacted us. There are a number of opportunities to share your feedback or ask questions. Obviously, the superintendent's video explaining the budget process is one way. Public comment at our Board of Education meetings and public hearings. Email us with concerns, questions, comments, budget@wcsdny.org. The spring of '25 we'll have community forums at each of the high school. And again, you can go to our website and check out the 25-26 budget page. So in conclusion, once again, I thank you for taking the opportunity to view this video, sharing some important information in regards to the development of the Wappinger Central School District 25-26 school year budget as we work to build our future together. Thank you.